Welcome to Crime Most French, a weekly podcast taking you through intriguing cases carried out on French soil. Researched and narrated by Cedric and rudely interrupted by me, Melanie. We're the true crime podcast on the Alliance. Crack open le vin and let the mayhem commence.
This is our episode number 7. We are looking at a much less well-known case this time. It's the Papin sisters. Not Tatin like the tart, Papin with 2 P's.
They'd be sweeter if they were the Tatin sisters. I'm guessing they're not so sweet.
Not so much, no. The Papin sisters were Christine, who was born in 1905 and died in 1937, and Lea, who was born in 1911 and died in 2001.
Wow.
They're 2 house employees, and they murdered their employers on the 2nd of February 1933.
Okay, one of them lives quite a long time for being murderers, but I guess the story will tell.
Yes, we'll get to that. They are thought of as model employees, and their trial, which made it national news in France, polarizes the country, and it divides the country between those who want them dead and those who want them acquitted because they represent the class fight between upper class and lower class.
Mm-hmm. So rather than it being a gentle lady shouldn't really have their heads cut off, it's more of they're the proletariat. So yes,
some people said it wasn't murder, it was rebellion.
Okay. Right, okay. That's putting spin on it.
Yeah. Let's have a look at a little bit of context. In April 1926, Léonie Landslide, who's 56, married to René Landslide. He's a desk insurance employee in Le Mans, that of the 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the murder happens just before the race started, and it was the 10th year anniversary of the race.
Okay.
They decide to hire help for the house. They hire Christine Papin as a cook and Lea, her sister, as a maid.
Mm-hmm.
The rules of the house are very strict at the time. For example, the employees are forbidden to talk to anyone other than their employers and their daughter, who's called Genevieve, and she's 21 at the time. In return, they are paid pretty well. I've read 300 francs a month, and they get free food, free house.
It's not bad.
In fact, it's so much not bad that over 7 years, the sisters managed to save 22,200 francs,
wow,
which is an absolute fortune at the time.
Yeah.
Because 1 franc at the time was about €1 now.
Mm-hmm.
So they saved over 22,000 euros in a world where the bread was something like a cent or 2. Because we're talking 100 years of inflation since.
Yes.
So
they both could have bought big properties for each of them, presumably.
They could have easily bought a house with that, possibly 2, yes. In February 1933, as I said, the city of Le Mans is ready to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the race. There is a trial that starts, which is an insurance scandal where investors were tricked into investing in companies that were not really worthy by their insurance broker. Okay. And René, one of the 2 employers is kind of touched by that.
Okay.
I didn't find much information because I know he didn't go to jail or anything, so he wasn't convicted, but he was definitively pretty close to the action, at least.
Near the heat, but not at the centre of the flame.
Yeah, he's at least accused of fraud.
Okay.
I don't think he's been condemned or sentenced or anything, but he was accused of fraud at the time. On the 2nd of February, the day of the crime, Lea drops small breads, and not only she dropped bread, but they ended up in a place that is not their designated place. And apparently in the house, that was a big no-no. Things all had their place. And it was the second time she put something where it shouldn't go. The previous time was 5 years earlier.
Wow.
And to punish her, Madame Landslide had apparently grabbed her by the shoulder, pinched her really hard, and brought Lea to her knees. And she made her pick up what she dropped. Although she didn't react at the time, she related the story to her sister.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that she'd better not do that again, or she'll have to defend herself.
Yeah. There's definitely a fine line between being house proud and being obsessive compulsive about where everything is. And
she totally was, yes.
Yes, that sounds like the latter.
Yeah. They had very, very strict rules, and everything had its place. And if you put something in the wrong place, you get punished.
Yeah.
Only happened twice in 5 years, but still, it happened. They're getting closer to the crime now. On that day, Madame Landslide and her sister left the house for the afternoon.
Okay.
I think they went shopping somewhere.
They weren't heading down to the track to watch the race, no?
No, because it wasn't on yet. I think it was on soon after.
Okay.
The eldest Papin sister, Christine, irons clothes, and Lea cleans the house at the same time. The iron breaks down and creates a shortcut and a power cut. So Christine gets an electrician to check it, but he says when he's asked later that he didn't find anything wrong with the iron.
Okay.
There are several versions of what follows, and I don't know which one to believe. In some version, nothing more happened on that day, and on other versions, Madame Landslide lost it completely when Christine asked her to pay the electrician, because Christine had paid the electrician with her money, and she was asking for the money back. And apparently, in that version, she completely lost it, and she decided to charge the money to Christine on her pay. It's hard to know which of them is true. It probably doesn't matter anyway, but it's hard to know for sure.
Well, I guess it all adds to the defence of working for unreasonable employers, doesn't it? I mean, you don't want to be working with substandard equipment and then have to pay to have the substandard equipment fixed.
Yeah, definitely. Although, according to the electrician, nothing was wrong with it, so it could have been bad manipulation from Christine, who knows? No. I guess in 1933, electricity was kind of magic still.
Yeah, and also how reliable was the iron as well. You know?
Yeah. There probably wasn't any electrical standards on it, I think, so maybe the wires were not right, and I don't know.
There was no kite mark, or whatever the French equivalent of the kite mark is, which is...
So the murder happened in two different phases. First, when Madame Landslide and her daughter came back at about 5:30 p.m., Christine informs her of the problem with the iron. That's how she explains why the house is dark. Okay. Because it's February, so it's night quite early. At 5:30 it would be quite dark. Yeah. Apparently an argument started after that, and it escalates into a fight between the employer, her daughter, and Christine. And that's when Christine starts hitting the other two quite badly.
Wow, okay.
She was obviously brought up a bit rougher than the other two, so she had the upper hand.
Yeah.
Apparently Christine was then uncontrollable with rage.
Okay.
As her sister comes, she orders her to pluck off one of Madame's eyes. This podcast is going to have an explicit
oh my,
rating.
Yeah, no, wow.
Yes.
Actually pluck out her eye.
Yeah.
Ooh.
She apparently doesn't do it.
Phew.
But Christine does it.
Oh, how do you, I mean, if you've not got a beak, how do you peck, how do you get someone's eye out of their socket? I wouldn't even logistically know how to do that. I don't want to think about it too hard or I'll faint.
Well, apparently the way it started is Christine plucked one eye from the daughter and threw the eye down the stairs. And Lea, again, there's two different versions. There's one where Lea refuses to do anything, and one where Lea does the same thing to the mum.
Okay.
The trial decided to go with the one where Christine does the mum as well.
Christine, is she the older one?
Yeah, she's the older one.
So she's kind of like the alpha in that situation.
Yeah. So the result is the daughter loses one eye, the mum loses two.
Wow.
The trial later says that Christine did it with her fingers. She just went in with her fingers, took the eyes out.
That is brutal.
No, it's not finished. Then Lea goes and gets a knife, a hammer, and a tin pot. Yeah, tin pot. Don't know why. She got the tin pot. With those, they hammer the two victims to death. They cut them as well. I've seen the crime photos. I didn't put them on the website.
No.
Because they're
good.
They're quite explicit. But you can see that they've been cut like a roast that you cut so that it doesn't explode when it cooks.
Okay.
So they've been cut the whole length like that.
Wow. So we're talking frenzied overkill.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And the AME in his autopsy calls it a bloody mess. Because you have to sort out all the bits and stuff before you can start looking at things more precisely. So
Gruesome.
Yes. Then the sisters wash themselves. They go to bed. And they both go into Christine's bed, which was under the roof. And their plan is to say that they had to defend themselves against the two other women.
Oh, what kind of marks did they have?
None.
Okay. So they obviously did such a fantastic job at defending themselves.
Yes.
They weren't touched.
Yes. And apparently they had a saying together, the sisters, which was, here you go, all clean. And that's what they say before they go to bed. The second phase is when Landslide comes home. He was in the club. I've heard different versions of that club, but essentially it was a...
Was it a gentleman's club?
It was an exclusive club at least.
Yeah. It will have been a gentleman's club.
Yeah.
They're always a gentleman's club, especially in the 20s. Hello.
Yeah, 30s, 1930s.
30s, yeah, sorry.
Point,
yes.
So he comes home at about 7 p.m. and he finds the house all dark, which
Bit
he found
suspicious.
weird.
Mm.
Then when he tried to get in, the door was locked from inside,
Okay.
which he found very strange as well. The only light he could see in the house was the reflection of a candle in the maid's room under the roof. He tries to call them, but they don't answer. So he started to worry at that point because why are they not answering? He's just there calling them. He decided that something is very wrong. So he calls the police, and the police sends 2 policemen and a clerk. I've heard different versions of who the clerk was. One of them was that he was the equivalent of a sergeant.
Okay.
Some that he was a desk clerk. I don't know for sure who he was.
Mm-hmm.
I have his name. He was Boutier, but I don't know his exact function.
Good name.
But I'm guessing that he was there to record whatever was going on.
So.
When they go into the house, they first discover an eye on the stairs.
Oh, they thought it was a marble.
Yeah, a bit squishy and big for a marble. And then they discover 2 bodies at the top of the stairs, with all the teeth broken.
Oh my God, that is barbaric.
The face is completely destroyed with a hammer. They're barely recognizable. And they're cooked, as I said, like a
getting
roast.
ready for the oven. Wow.
Yeah, ready for the oven. And of course, the bodies have no eyes. They also find the 2 sisters in their room, and they were in bed pretending to be scared, but they refused to open their door. So they had to get a locksmith to open the door.
Okay.
Don't know why, because really 1930s doors
You think, well, especially...
wouldn't have been that strong.
And, I mean, you're talking, it's kind of like the Helps living quarters, so it's not going to be made of fabulous wood. And it's not going to be...
It would have been cheap stuff, though.
Exactly. Be thin and just that'll do.
Yeah, and there were 4 grown men on the other side of the door, so you would think that it would have been easy to break. But anyway, they called the locksmith.
I'm sure a desk sergeant would have had that door in. He must have been some soft-handed...
But they're not all Terry Crews, but yeah.
No, I guess not.
Once they get in, they stop pretending to be scared very quickly and they just confess to the murder. Not only they confessed to the murder, but they said they had no motive. It just happened.
Wow. It was an accident.
Yeah, so they're arrested on the spot, obviously, because crime solved.
Yeah.
The next day, all the newspapers have their front page on that story, of course. Then it goes national. And it starts about 50 years of debate. As I said at the start, the vast majority of the opinion in the country demand their execution, obviously, because there are 2 murderers. Who 2 cold-blood murderers as well, because it's not like they had to save their skin. They just decided to kill people, and that was it. There's a minority, mostly on the left and far left, who see that as a class struggle case, and therefore they're just rebelling against abuse from their employer and blah, blah, blah.
One incidence of somebody overreacting is not beating your servants on a regular basis. And I mean, they were paid very, very well. I don't see that as a valid argument. That's ludicrous.
We'll see during the trial, we'll learn a bit more about what was actually going on.
Okay.
But one thing that's been noticed is that both cases don't see the 2 sisters as human. They just see them as animals, really. Because they don't really want to ask hard questions. Why did they do it?
Yeah.
What exactly was going on in their heads? They don't really want to know.
No, two genteel ladies. What were they thinking?
Yeah. So let's have a look at the Papin sisters a bit closer.
Mm-hmm.
They were born from Clémence Dare. She was an unfaithful wife and not very maternal. And her husband was Gustave Papin. He was weak and drunkard. The couple gets married in 1901. 4 months later, they have a first daughter, Emilia.
Sorry? They got married and 4 months later?
Yeah, it happened.
Yeah, I hear the sounds of shotguns in the background.
Yeah. Then Christine is born in 1905 and Lea in 1911. Clémence leaves her husband when it is discovered that Gustave raped Emilia when she was 10. The divorce is acted in 1913, but the rape charge is not considered. It's just buried.
Well, of course.
Nobody wants to talk about it.
No.
Emilia is sent to boarding school, and she becomes a nun at 16.
Well, it's not really that surprising.
And the whole life is treated like it's all her fault. She did it.
Mm.
There are doubts on Gustav's paternity as well.
Mm.
Some people are saying, "Oh, at least he's not incest."
It's still it's just paedophilia instead of incest. Well, that's all right.
That's
then.
all right.
Oh, God.
So that's the 1930s for you. Christine and Lea are raised by their mum.
Mm-hmm.
She places them in various houses, usually separate.
Okay.
And she normally pulls them out very quickly because she's never happy by how much they're paid. So she always complains she's not paid enough, so she takes them out and puts them in another house.
So she's basically saying, you're not earning me enough money.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
So basically they didn't have the happiest Disney-style childhood. It was pretty hard.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they didn't have a happy childhood
No.
at all. Christine is placed with the Landslide when she was 22. She then asks for a sister to join her as help because she can't do everything on her own. They are seen as model employees. They work really hard. The only thing that is not completely right during their employment is that Christine shows intolerance mixed with some strange hate when Madame Landslide comments on what she does. Not necessarily bad things, but when she says, well, you haven't done that right, she becomes dismissive and angry, and so that's the only thing, but nothing more than that happens.
So she doesn't like being critiqued?
She doesn't like to be critiqued, yes.
Mm-hmm.
The employers don't really notice it that much.
No.
They know it happens. It's mostly the friends and neighbors that have noticed it more than the Landslide themselves.
Mm-hmm.
There's been witnesses during the trial who said, yeah, we noticed that she was a bit strange and didn't like her that much, but they had very little contact with anyone anyway, so it kind of went under the radar very quickly and nobody cared too much. During their trial, they repeat several times that they had no beef against their employers. They were happy where they were. They liked their employers. There was no problem. They even refused any link with the punishment that happened 5 years earlier. They said, no, we had completely forgotten about that. It has nothing to do with it. We have really nothing against them.
So basically they just snapped.
Yeah. The two sisters go to mass every Sunday. They're always all made up and wearing nice dresses, but they don't talk to anyone. The shop owners know them at a distance, really. They've seen them, but that's about it. They don't know anything about them.
Mm-hmm.
All they notice is that they don't fraternize with the boys or anything like that.
Yeah.
The reason for that is very simple. They had a pact and they decided that no boy would come between them. So the easiest way is not to talk to any boys at all.
Sisters before misters.
In that case, yes, but a bit extreme. So there are 3 events during the 6 years of employment of the Papin sisters that can shed a little bit of light on what happened.
Mm-hmm.
In 1929, Madame Landslide, the employer, impressed by how much the sisters were working and how seriously they were taking their work and how many hours they were putting into the job, decides to change her attitude towards her employees. Normally, until now, she had decided to be neutral. So their employees are employees. She doesn't want to know anything about them. It's not their problem. But at that point, she decided to get involved a bit, and she contacted the mother, and she negotiated with the mother that the 2 sisters would keep their whole pay. So the 2 sisters would give no money to their mum.
All right, okay. I'm surprised the mother put up with that.
Well, she probably wasn't given the choice anyway, because at that point, they were in their 20s, so they were over 21, so they were adults.
I guess living away from home.
So yeah, and she couldn't make them do anything at that point because they were adults. They were independent. Mm. Well, at least one of them was.
Well, yes.
Christine was 22 when she was hired.
Uh-huh.
Now, Lea is much younger, so she probably wasn't yet. In fact, that comes back a bit later. But at that point, the 2 sisters see their employer in a different light because now she went from just an employer to kind of surrogate mother. Yeah. Because she's looking after them.
Yeah, looking out for their welfare.
Yeah. And in the background, when nobody hears them, they call Madame Landslide mum as well.
Oh, right, okay. Wow.
So everything seems to be going well. The second event was that the 2 sisters were split from their mother in 1929 as well.
Okay.
It came up fairly suddenly. They just decided that they didn't want to have anything to do with their mum anymore. They didn't want to talk to her, didn't want to see her, nothing. The mum, when she's asked during the trial, says she has no idea what happened or why. Just one day she was told, nah, we don't want to see you again. That's it.
That's very
strange. And she never saw them again.
Very, very strange.
Yeah, it's strange. It happens after Madame Landslide decided to help them, but I don't know if there's a direct link or not. The 2 sisters, to justify it, mentioned that their mum criticized them and they decided that it was one step too far.
Wow. They really don't take criticism very well, do they?
Yeah. And Christine, from then on, would only talk about her mum as that woman.
Okay.
Employer Ronnie and his brother-in-law are a bit worried of the breakup because it changed the mood of the two sisters. They become a bit darker and moody.
Mm-hmm.
So they're slightly worried, but they still do their job and still going okay. So nothing else happens. The third event took place in August 1931, 2 years later. As the Landslide are on holiday, the two sisters are left at home. And in a state of hyper-excitation, they contact the mayor, who was called Arsène Lefebvre. Christine, with the silent approval of Lea, who doesn't say anything but says, nods her head, yes, requested Lea's emancipation because she says her employer is persecuting and locking them up. They also complained about the mayor's negative attitude. Apparently, it's all his fault if she's not freed. All the mayor does says, okay, the police station is over there. You go there and you press charges.
Yeah.
Some employees of the Mary confirmed all that.
Yeah.
Nobody understood what was going on. It certainly happened. They were all angry and all wanted things. And
do you think they were miffed because they didn't go away on holiday?
I guess so. I didn't think of that, but maybe. I don't know. But nothing really comes of that.
No.
It's just it
That's
dies
very
and
bizarre.
gets forgotten.
They could have been
4 years.
having wild and crazy parties, but no.
Yeah. So let's have a look at the trial. The inquiry lasted 45 weeks. I suspect some of that is due to the fact that nobody could believe that two young girls would do what they did.
Yeah.
Remember, in a previous episode, the police left the actual murderer out for a long time because they couldn't believe a woman would do anything. So it's possible that it's part of that. But 45 weeks is a long time. We're talking most of a year,
well,
9 months. So.
Look what happened to Lizzie Borden.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why she was never condemned for what she did, was because of the fact she was a reasonably young girl. So
yeah. In July 1933, Christine changes her version when she talks to the instructing judge, which is the equivalent of a DA, I guess.
Yeah.
She takes the blame for the murders. She says Lea didn't do anything, it was all me. The judge then changes the charges, obviously, and Lea becomes only co-accused of a single murder instead of being murderer of two.
Sounds about right.
Yes. During the inquiry, they also do psychiatric evaluations. There are two camps. One camp saying that there's nothing wrong with them. They're totally fit for trial.
Yep.
And a smaller camp of 1 or 2 people saying there is obviously something wrong. It will come back a few times in the trial. The problem is many people are complaining that the trial is going really fast because the whole trial lasted a day.
The inquiry lasted 45 weeks, and the actual time in the courtroom lasted a day.
Yeah, that's
insane.
Super short.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, we know from previous episode that a week or 2 was fairly common, but no, that was one day. Everybody wants it out of the way. They don't want to know about it, really. They just want it gone. It was on the 28th of September 1933. And of course, the trial house is surrounded by lots of people, as you can imagine. Because it's been in the press and they want to see the two sisters, the two murdering sisters. The defense requests a second psychiatric evaluation, but it's refused. They based their request on the fact that at least one of the doctor and a few other people around the doctor was Dr. Log, which is the ogre. He disagrees with pretty much everybody else by saying that you can see several things going on. You can see that there's a feedback loop between the two sisters. You can see several mental anomalies. You can see hysteria. You can see a number of afflictions. Therefore, there is clearly something wrong mentally with the sisters. And it should be looked at a bit more closely. But the jury doesn't care. The jury sides with the majority of the experts.
Of course.
They're fit for trial. There's nothing wrong with them. Let's
get
on with things.
Yeah.
As far as the jury and the prosecuting judge is concerned, the crime is all about anger that snowballed into rage and murder. Essentially, that's all they're interested in. That's their story.
Yeah.
That's it. And the jury sides with them. That's why it's so short. The defense tried to make the two sisters recognized insane, but insanity at the time is very narrowly defined. It means that, first of all, you don't have the judgment of or the will required to make a conscious decision.
Okay.
So you're no longer controlling your actions and your thoughts. And secondly, the psychosis would make it impossible to understand the meaning of your actions and the consequences of your actions. So that's how they define insanity. During the trial, there's a long argument between two camps. Are they insane? Are they not insane? And in the end, the jury decides that no, they're not insane. They don't fulfill the whole definition of insanity.
Mm-hmm.
So they are tried as normal sane people. They tried everything they could to make them look insane by having a second inquiry, which was second evaluation, which was refused.
Mm-hmm.
Then they tried to show that they matched the definition of insanity, and that didn't work either. So in the end, that's it. They were sane, and therefore they can be tried and sentenced to something.
Mm-hmm.
During the trial, also the judge directs the debates and the jury's decisions by making sure that, for example, their childhood is not taken into account. So they don't take into account the violence they had when they were kids, the possible incest with their sister.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
There was also a crazy cousin. There was an uncle that hung himself. There was lots of bad things going on in the family, but the judge tries to get everything out of the picture.
And that it's just looked at in isolation.
Yes.
Mm.
The whole plan was to look at just the crime, nothing around it, no justification for it, just the crime, and therefore they're guilty. That was clearly the plan of the prosecuting judge.
That doesn't seem reasonable.
Yeah, even the story of them going to the mayor and then the police, all crazy and asking things that are not really make no sense.
Yes.
And saying they were locked up, and even though they were saying they were locked up by their employers, even though they had been left for a couple of weeks on their own in the house, and they could get out because they were out.
Yes, exactly.
So
they hadn't
no
starved to death. Or
exactly. None of it made any sense.
No.
But even that is taken as proof that they had a feeling of persecution that wasn't real.
Yeah.
And that is what fueled their rage against their employer. So even when they actually acted crazy, it's taken as proof that they weren't crazy and that justified what they did, and therefore they're guilty again. They just can't get out of it.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that they cleaned the murder weapons and themselves after the murder is also taken as proof that they acted in
entirely
cold blood.
sane. Yeah,
it was all planned and it was all rational.
Yeah.
So everything they did, even the crazy bits, are all twisted and turned to show that they were in fact rational, and it was all done on purpose, and they were in control of their actions and they knew what they were doing. Yeah. There's nothing the defense could do to stop them being found guilty, really.
Well, to me, it sounds like they had deferred rage for their mother, which was just transferred onto this woman who obviously might have been a bit cold and crazy, but, you know, started acting like their mother, and she ended up getting all the wrath that they had for the mother. Yeah.
Also, when they were in prison awaiting trial, Christine was going nuts. She had hallucinations, for example.
Okay.
She says one of them was that she saw her sister hanging from a tree with missing legs. She had loss of memory. She was ranting uncontrollably and incomprehensibly for hours and hours. Yeah. She was self-mutilating as well. She tried to gouge one of her eyes.
She's got a thing about eyes, doesn't she? It's all very Greek tragedy.
Yeah. She had mystical delirium. All that was taken as proof that she was faking.
Right, okay. That would be tiring, having to fake the fact you're that crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
But the tribunal decided, no, she's just obviously faking, so guilty. The prosecution concludes that the chances that Christine did the murdering by gouging the eyes of the two victims and Lea hammered and stabbed the bodies post-mortem was the most likely explanation for the facts that they could see. So on the 29th of September 1933, after 40 minutes of deliberation, again going really fast, Christine is sentenced to death for the double murder, and her sister is sentenced to 10 years of hard labor with 20 years of banishment, which I couldn't understand what the definition was, but that's how it was defined. So maybe she's not allowed to come back to the city for 20 years. I don't know exactly what it was, but I found that in several sources.
Okay.
20 years of banishment.
So when she's sent to hard labor, is it out in the colonies, or is
she's sent to Rennes, so Brittany, so not far, essentially next door from Le Mans.
Yeah.
So, no, she's not sent to Guyana.
She's sent to the frozen north instead.
Yes. Christine is pardoned by the president at the time, Albert Lebrun, on the 22nd of January 1934, and her sentence is commuted to life of hard labor.
Okay.
One of the main reasons is that no women had been sentenced to death since 1887. So they decided that let's keep the streak and not have a woman sentenced to death.
Mm-hmm.
So she goes to hard labor like her sister as well. Christine is transferred to Rennes, and she falls into a very deep depression as soon as she arrives there. She refuses any kind of food. She's then sent to a psychiatric hospital on the 25th of May 1934, still near Rennes. She falls into a schizophrenic state. She's totally immobile. She's silent. She's on her knees. As she's malnourished because she refuses any kind of food, she dies on the 18th of May 1937. She was 32 at the time.
To me, this woman has large psychiatric problems. That's tragic. Yes. That is just tragic.
Lea is freed in 1943
mm-hmm.
after serving every last day of her sentence.
Yeah, of course.
She then worked for many years as maid in various hotels in the west of France.
Okay.
When she's old, she's adopted by an old couple who pretends to their kid that she's their third grandmother.
Okay. Bonus granny!
Yeah, exactly. The kids are not asking many questions there. She dies on the 24th of July 2001. She's 89, and she never married, never had kids on the way.
Mm.
That's it for the story. There's a few things we can look at. For example, there's been more recent psychologists that looked at the reports
mm-hmm.
from the time, and one of them found a similar case in Le Mans as well, 7 months earlier.
There's something in the water in Le Mans.
Yes, where a couple, the Anjoubeaux, had killed a couple of farmers. The crime had lots of similarities with what the sisters did. And she, the psychologist, think that it's not unlikely that inspired the sisters.
Okay.
Also, according to these psychologists who looked at the reports,
mm-hmm.
they say that's a fairly classical case of folie à deux. So two people creating some kind of positive feedback loop between
mm-hmm.
them. So they push each other
yes.
until they get to a crime. But at the time, it wasn't a very well-known thing.
No.
One of the psychologists who disagreed with the results of the evaluation was hinting at something like that.
Mm.
He didn't call it folie à deux because it wasn't really called that at the time, and it wasn't really understood. But he kind of hinted at a loop, a feedback loop between the two sisters.
Yeah.
That should really have been looked at a bit more closely.
Well, yeah, I mean, it only takes, obviously, the stronger character to have real psychological problems and a weaker partner to create that kind of like magic dynamic of creating a bubble and for things to go horribly wrong.
Yeah, because they did live in the bubble. They didn't see anyone, didn't talk to anyone. They were just together, and that was it. It was them against the rest of the world. So
yeah, yes. I mean, you lose perspective very easily if you stay isolated on your own with a partner. Oh, thank God we have 5 cats. That's the only thing that's keeping us sane.
Yeah. Of course, the story inspired lots of films, lots of books, and even some English-speaking ones. For example, there's a book by Nancy Meckler called Sister, My Sister,
mm-hmm.
which relates that story.
Okay.
So that's it.
Oh,
that's the sister of Papa.
Oh, well, and I think the moral of the story is sometimes it's safer to cook your own dinner and wash your own dishes.